I'm Dr. Joel Ying. This is my class, Storytelling is Healing, and part of our final projects, or our semi-final project. And we have a showcase for you of different stories. First, a few couple things. One is if you have one of those little things in your pocket or somewhere that make noise, if you could just put it on vibrate or silent. And also some gratitude for the folks who gave us food. So the Seidler Foundation, we'll give them a round of applause. I want to thank my co-producer, because I love embarrassing her, Lori Cornelius. She's the program director for the creative writing. So if you need to know anything about creative writing, she's it. All right. And please give yourselves a round of applause, because one of my friends says about storytelling, if you weren't here, we'd be talking to ourselves. So the lively art of storytelling is in-person performance, and it's the same reason that we go to live music, even though we can listen to it on a CD. There is something about the connection that happens when we can experience story together, not just the teller connected to the audience, but you're all sharing experience together. So when you leave here, you'll have shared something together. You will be a community. So I'm excited to bring some stories to you and talk about the different ways that stories can be healing. So without further ado, are you ready for our first storyteller? So our first storyteller, she gave me some things about her. Holly Kangay?
Sure.
Okay. Is a theater major at FGCU and a proud mama to her 9-year-old son. Her greatest wish is to be of service to the younger generations and guiding them to their highest accessible expression of self. Holly has a story called Frida and Me. Frida and Me. Please welcome to the stage, Holly.
Hello. So when I first learned about Frida Kahlo, I was stuck in bed with a broken pelvis. My pelvis was broken in 3 places. I had a broken tailbone and I had a broken collarbone. I was 18 years old and I had been in a really, really bad car accident. I was really lucky to be alive. And I would be in a hospital bed in my childhood bedroom for the next 3 months or so. And a professor, this was college round 1, a professor actually came to visit me at my home and recommended that I make art while I was stuck in bed, and also recommended that I look up Frida Kahlo. And I did, and I was just blown away by the way that she expressed herself, by the way that I could feel the art just by looking at it. If you don't know Frida Kahlo, she is a Mexican folk artist. That's how she's classified. But she is also a surrealist artist. She is also an emotional artist. She is an artist of my heart. So saying folk artist doesn't quite get there. Well, Frida was also in an accident when she was 18, and it was much worse than mine. She was on a city bus standing, and that bus was jackknifed by a car, and it crushed the bus in 2, which crushed her bones. And she was also impaled by the bar that she had been holding on to. It fell off and it went straight through her. And it obliterated her chances of ever having a healthy pregnancy. And in addition, it created pain that would follow her whole life in her spine. Well, I got better. After 3 months of and doing some physical therapy, I moved to a wheelchair. And then I moved to a walker at 18. And then I moved to a cane. And there was an audition coming up, and I really wanted to be in this play. And it was a musical. So I hobbled in on my cane, and I got up on stage, and I gave it my best. And you guys, I got the female lead. I don't know how it happened, but I did. And it was such an incredibly physical show. And at the start, I was still on my cane. So I was not only learning to walk again, I was learning to dance. And there were somersaults and tumbles and jumping and all kinds of stuff while you're singing. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But I think back on that as a way of relating that I really could rise to any challenge if I'm just excited enough about what I'm doing. So Frida met Diego Rivera, a Mexican artist who was already famous, when she was just a child. And she really thought he was the best ever. He was like a god to her. He basically hung the moon. And she ran into him later in life when she was just a little bit older. I mean, just after she was in adulthood. And their friendship then turned into a flirtation, which turned into love, and they got married when she was 22. They had a very unconventional love story. So their marriage was open, meaning he had lots of affairs with women, and so did she. She also had affairs with a few men, but they knew about each other's affairs, and they sort of acted as if they didn't know. They built 2 houses in Mexico City with a bridge between the 2, so that each of them could have their independent lives and their creativity, but they could come together when they wanted to. So I met Jason when I wrote the ages. I met Jason when I was 32 and he was 25. I thought he was way too young for me. He drank too much, he smoked too much, and basically was really a bad match. But he worked so hard to convince me otherwise. And eventually our flirtation turned into love. And we got married on a mountain in Colorado, and it was so beautiful. And it felt like all my dreams were coming true, and this was like the happy ending, right? So we ended up moving from Colorado to Orlando shortly after we got married because I really wanted a family, and our families were in Florida and Georgia. So we moved back to Florida, and I was pregnant within 6 months of us getting married. Frida got pregnant too. And the pregnancy, even though she was advised and given medicine by doctors to medically abort, the pregnancy persisted, and she really had hope that this would be her baby. So she carried that baby for 3 months before she had a really life-threatening miscarriage. So she was hemorrhaging so badly that she ended up in the hospital for 3 months. And, you know, I compare that back to my little 3-month stint of not being able to walk. And here she is after she lost her baby, and she's stuck in the hospital for 3 months. And, you know, she just got by with her life, and there are accounts that she didn't want to go on living, but she did. And when she got out of the hospital, she became the artist that we know. Her art became deeper, more visceral, more guttural, and more symbolic. And people know of the art that she created after this point. And I really believe that her best art was born out of her deepest pain. My son was born. He's a healthy baby boy after 9 months, 1 week, and 51 hours of labor. He was born healthy. And when I held him in my arms, I felt the deepest love that I ever felt in my life. And it was a deeper love than I even knew existed. And I felt at once this sense of ecstasy, elation, and so terrified, so scared, because I had held him in my tummy for 9 months and he was safe in there. But now that he was out, I had to let him go a little bit more every day of my life. And I knew that right away. So a love like that, it changes you. At the age of 46, Frida Kahlo finally had a solo art show in her hometown of Mexico City. It took all the way to 46. She was ill and she wasn't allowed to leave her bed. And so she had her hair done up in braids with flowers all around her face. She had a beautiful Mexican dress on her, and she laid in her four-poster bed and was carried through the streets of Mexico City and into her art gallery opening. What a beautiful thing. She was there. At the age of 46, I decided to go back to school. I got my AA degree when I was younger, but I always wanted to get my undergrad. And I felt a different type of motivation now that my son was getting older. I really wanted to show him what was possible. And now I'm making the impossible possible every day, juggling full-time in-person school with family, home, finances, and whatever else comes up. And you guys, something else always comes up. So I feel really, I'm gonna be 47 in 2 months, and I feel like I'm really just getting started. Frida was 47 when she died. Diego Rivera made her home, Casa Azul, the blue house, into a museum so that people would always be able to know about her artistry and the way that she lived. The last piece of art that she made was a picture of cut up watermelons. And one of the watermelons in this perfect smiling shape has carved into it Viva la vida, which translates to long live life. And after she died, they looked in her diary and they found that one of the last entries, it was written that she hoped she had a joyful exit and she hoped never to return. I can only hope that the legacy that she left is played out in some small way in the way that I live my life, with that passion, that tenderness, that ferocity, and that amazing truth that was always brought through in her work. Viva la vida.
Thank you, Holly. How many have heard of Frida before Holly? Oh, so she's very well known. Well, now you know more about Frida and more about Holly. And let's invoke Frida today and let's all say, Viva la vida. Viva la vida. Oh, thank you, Holly. I love how stories can be braided together. So we have a personal historical story together and how impactful she's been in your life. So really excited. We were talking about history stories in my class, and we chatted and said, you know, if you were like me, when I was in history class in high school, history was boring. Anybody else? Yeah, a few of you. Names, dates, presidents, had them all memorized. You know, that was it. If I had known that history was just stories, it would have been so much more fun. And so much more interesting to know the different stories in history. And so part of our history project with some of the stories that we're telling today are also that the stories, there are stories in history that have not yet been told, or stories that do not get told as much as they should. And so what we choose to tell matters. What we choose to tell matters. And that's the storytelling tradition we have here. All of my students are telling things that they feel are important. So you ready for another story? All right. I have a note. If you're ever an MC, make sure you ask the people who are coming up how to say their name. So if I mess up your last names, please forgive me. But anyway, or correct me. Madison Stagel is our next storyteller. Now, Madison is a psychology major with a minor in education and medical humanities at FGCU. She has a passion for working with children and hopes to become a mental health counselor in the future. Madison's story is, I was not meant to survive. I was not meant to survive. Please help me welcome Madison.
Okay, hi guys. How's everybody doing? Okay, so my story is a true story from my great uncle who lived during the time of World War II. And this is just his version of persevering through all of the hardships that he endured. So it's called I'm Not Meant to Survive, or I Was Not Meant to Survive. I was not supposed to survive. Not in Turkey, not in Armenia, not in France, not after what I did. My name is Pierre Arthur Ohanian, and before I touched a diamond, I learned how to disappear. See, I was a part of this movement called Free French, where I would take the lives of Armenian citizens and forge documents so that they could cross German borders without being touched. I did this for families, children, mothers, fathers, all Armenian citizens, up until I was caught. And I was sent to France to a work camp where I was bombarded with guards asking me daily if I knew how to repair watches. Who knew a lie could save a life? So, as the German soldiers came up to me and asked if I knew how to repair watches, I lied, of course, in hopes to save my life, and said yes, knowing I've never seen the inside of a watch, seen the tiny springs or the little gears moving together, time itself in my hands. I was meant to fix. And as I got to working on the watches, I learned this passion, this desire, this skill I didn't once have. And it led me to survival. It led me to avoid the death march. And so survival is not the same as living, so I escaped. And I ran as far away from the work camps in France as I possibly could, until my legs were too numb to continue, until my breath was louder than my fear. I ran until I found a barn in solitude, hiding in its own little area. I hid for a couple of days until I was sold out by the lady who owned the barn for some food. And just like that, I was sent back to France. And the German soldier that retrieved me looked at me and said, "You know, I could kill you for this. It's my job to kill you." So I looked at him and I said, "It's my job to escape." And as I continued living in France in the work camps, I came across a potato. The only time I have ever seen a potato in all the years I spent there. And I dug it out of the ground and looked at it. Black and decaying in some spots, soft in others. Still starving, I ate it anyways, because when you're hungry, that hungry, you stop choosing. Once the war ended, I got out of France. Get me out of here, don't want to be here anymore. I left France and moved to America, where I started my life. The thing that saved me, my lie. Repairing jewelry, that's what I did in America, in New York, and I became one of the best. Not officially, of course, it wasn't recorded anywhere, that's how it always goes, but I was one of the best, one of the top 10. Van Cleef knew, Cartier knew, Harry Winston knew. They trusted my hands to build their jewelry, to repair their jewelry. I used to walk around the streets of New York City with nothing but pearls and diamonds tucked away in tissue paper in my pocket. And it's funny to me because at one point I had nothing but a rotten potato. During my time in America, I went to visit my sister who lives in Palm Beach now, which is great because I have clients there. So when I go visit family and I go visit clients, I sit and reflect on my time in the camps. In the place meant to destroy you, in a place meant to erase you, I persevered, all because of a lie.
All because of a lie. Thank you, Madison. Wow, let's give her another round of applause. So I'm always astounded by the creativity that you could put into nonfiction, right? It doesn't have to be boring. So thank you for shifting that to first person and telling us that beautiful story of your great uncle, is that right?
Yeah.
Great uncle. Wow. All right. Our next storyteller is a free spirit whose only wishes are to spread love and life to its fullest. Is that what you wrote? Okay, please help me welcome Tegan Callahan.
Ooh, guys, I'm nervous. It's hot up here. Okay. Okay, hey, how's everyone doing? I'm going to walk you through a phone call that transpired between my grandfather and I about his time serving in Vietnam. Now, if you know anyone who has served time in any branch anywhere, you are advised or suggested not really to ask about their time, being that it is a very triggering and sensitive time in their life. Now, I'm going to give you some background story of my grandfather. He is a 6'2", fairly grumpy old man in his late 70s from Jersey. Now, and before this phone call, I never really saw him give any type of emotion besides his love for me, of course. But it was really just that. He's very stone. He's very cold. So we had this phone call planned for 3 p.m. and just like how he is, 3 p.m. hit, my phone was ringing. And I was a little nervous. I didn't know where this call was gonna go, very touchy subject. So I had some prior knowledge that my grandfather surpassed these rankings faster than most people have ever seen before, so I started to talk about that. And I was like, I heard you were a hotshot. Tell me about it. So he started walking me through these things and describing to me what it was like. So you were either drafted or you joined. He was drafted, and so when you're drafted, you are obligated to serve 2 years in time. And at this point, he just graduated high school, and in his words, my grandmother and him were practically in love. So he was kind of just starting life, He was 18 when he went in. So he started describing it to me. You start your first 2 months in basic training, and then after basic training, you advanced into a specialty job, or a niche, if you will. And his specialty job was a radio mechanic. Looking back and knowing my grandfather now who can't work a phone, I don't know how he did that. So he was offered to go to an NCO school. I think it was called a non-commissioner officer, an officer school. And what this does is that you get paid more and then you have the opportunity to move up in ranks, right? And this course was what he said the word grueling. It was very physical. It was a lot of physical training for about 3 or so more months. And if you come out and you graduate, you come out as a sergeant, right? So he started listing all the things that he was learning in this course. He was learning how to build cryptic devices, scrambling devices, teletype radios, disassembling and reassembling any weapon you can think of, learning how to build and disarm explosives, learning how to survive in the jungle with nothing but a flashlight and a compass. Now, he kept saying compass, and I had no idea what he was talking about, so it took me a little to realize he was saying compass. So he described some form of his training. He was in Kentucky. In the middle of the night, they set him out in the middle of the jungle, and you had stakes in the ground, right? And all you had was a flashlight and a compass. I'm sorry, I and you had to find these coordinates. There were stakes like spread out across miles in this jungle, and you had the stake in the ground. There was coordinates to your next set of coordinates, and then you go to find it. I don't know. I could never do that. No, thank you. No, thank you. So after NCO school, 40 people started the course, right? 21 graduated. So 21 sergeants. He took 7 to 8 months to become a sergeant, when this would normally take people 5 to 6 years. To me, I was a little impressed. And then he got offered to go to OCF school. It was another officer's school, but this means you would become a lieutenant or a captain. Again, it would have taken him 2 years to become a captain or a lieutenant, when it normally takes people 5+. My great-grandfather, he never made it past private, and he served for 3 years in some war. So as he was in training and stuff like that, he's still in the States, right? So as he's in his training, he's like, I don't have to go anywhere. I'm going to be in the States. Like, I don't have to leave. No, he was wrong. If any of you have any prior knowledge about Vietnam War, which I'm pretty sure most of you do, it didn't go so well. They were losing a lot of men. And at this point in time where he was talking to me, they were losing a lot of sergeants specifically. So at this time, this is where the phone call started to get heavy. Like, it started to get intense. He started taking moments between, not just sentences, between words. I could tell he had to gather himself throughout this phone call. And I was even like, we don't have to do this, but it seemed like he really wanted to make his story known. So as we were talking a little bit, he said, and we were talking about the training and how people didn't really take him that seriously because he was so young and he was in charge of all these people. And he said, and I quote, "But Tegan, all the training in the world does not get you ready for the real thing." And that, the way he said it, the way this stone cold rock hard man just was so vulnerable with his words, it touched something in me, genuinely it did. And then he started moving on into this moment in training. One of the worst things in therapy to talk about, this is what he described it. He was in a box in a bunker at base. He was in charge of, remember, he was a radio mechanic, so he was in charge of all the equipment and stuff like that. And radios are very, very important because if you get hit, if anything happens, that radio, and there's no one else around you, the radio is all you have. Whew. Even I'm just like remembering this. The way he described this moment. It was a morning shift, and he wasn't supposed to be on that shift, I don't know, but a radio went off. And when you serve, you're not supposed to, in the battlefield I mean, you're not supposed to use real names. You're supposed to use like Blue Fox, Red Fox, code name, right? All of a sudden, this man, he heard an explosion. All you hear is, "Callahan, I'm hit. I'm hit. They took my legs." That's all he hears. Remember, my grandfather's, this is 18, 19, he's young. He's panicking, he doesn't know what to do. He said his actual name. At this point, this isn't even just some man, this is his friend calling out for him for help. As my grandfather was in the midst of panicking, another man comes in to the rescue basically, because when something like that happens, you locate the radio, you get the coordinates, and you send it up, and you send it somewhere so people can help him. He was stuck. Someone else had to do it for him. Later, he survived, by the way, the guy with no legs, he survived. They rekindled, and he said, "When I heard your voice, I was never so happy to hear a human's voice." And that stuck with my grandfather, I know. It touched something in his heart. So, now let's fast forward to actual Vietnam time, ready? He started this off with, excuse my French, "I was scared shitless." And I've never even heard my grandfather say the word scared before. He was supposed to, with all his training, he went as an instructor. He was supposed to have 5 to 6 people below him. When he went, and it was real time, real thing, there was not anywhere near the amount of equipment that he had training. And what he said, this really tiny guy, no seriously, he was short as shit, came up to me and said, "You're gonna drive a Jeep, a stick shift." My grandfather looked at me and was like, "What? What are you talking about? A stick? A stick shift? A Jeep? I'm gonna drive it?" "Yep, you're gonna be my driver," is what he said. So that already kind of threw him off kilter. And then when he went to go to his box in the bunker for the actual radio stuff, like I said, there was barely any equipment. And the guy told him there was 2 exits from the bunker, right? One, go this way. Don't go this way. There's wire that you're gonna get caught up in and it's gonna hurt. Guess which way he went. Anyways, my grandfather never talked about religion or anything. But after he described this moment, he mentioned the word God. Keep that in mind for a sec. So it was his first day in Vietnam. They were hit. Everything, like in the movies, like you can imagine, that's how he was describing it. Everything was just loud and explosive. And so when he ran out the wrong way, he got stuck in the wire. And as he was trying to help people, he couldn't help himself. A rocket hit like 2 to 3 feet away from him, and he shot up in the air, like he said, 3 to 4 feet. He's a big dude. He said, after that, "God, I have to get out of here." And the next morning, as he was so shaken up, and I can't believe he even was honest with me about this, he faked sickness and left. And that's illegal. You're not even supposed to do that. And he was, again, he's not proud of it, but he was so scared. I just can't imagine the toughest man I know being so scared he has to flee. That was insane. So, okay, fast forward to after his time and stuff like that. So when you're getting ready, prepared to go home, you are offered a steak dinner. And my grandfather, accepted the steak dinner, of course. So as they were loading the bus to go to said dinner, a man walked up to him. This man asked if he had any civilian clothing. And my grandfather was like, "No, I don't have any civilian clothing. I just keep on warm." And he said, "Well, there's a good chance you will not be welcome home. You will have a hard time finding a job. And you will, basically the country that you fought for will not be welcoming you home." That's basically what he said. So, fast forward. Took 15 years for him to get Medicare, and tried Obamacare. I guess it didn't work. He had a really tough time hearing, and so he kept getting denied for hearing aids and stuff like that. So then he was like, "No, I can't hear." His last chance to get hearing aids and compensated for it was in front of a judge. This judge, the whole time, he said, kept on looking at him like in such great sorrow. And finally, the judge actually brought him over and showed him his paperwork. Before you get sent off to go to war or wherever, you get evaluated to make sure you don't have any disabilities or impairment. My grandfather was borderline deaf, and it was right there on the paperwork. He saw with his own eyes he was not supposed to be sent to war, and they did it anyways. Let that sink in. So, at this point in time, my grandfather was crying. Tears actually coming. I heard it. His dad, he could barely talk about this. So then the judge pulled up his paperwork and all. Oh, by the way, this whole judge thing happened 4 years ago. 4 years ago. That's how little that's how much they underlooked anything the Vietnam veterans went through. So he should have not went, but he did get diagnosed with something and compensated for something. PTSD. Now, he was like, when they describe PTSD in movies or anything, it's like war flashbacks and you just get everything shot into your emotions all at once. Like you're just remembering everything. He said it's kind of like what that is, but so much worse. He described, he was on a cruise one time and there was a man talking about a Vietnam veteran, and my grandfather couldn't move from the table. It was a simple Vietnam, with one singular word, served time in ward. He just retired, and he is now 50 to 60 years later. After he's retired from golfing, everything is hitting him now. Same thing that happened with my grandfather. He stopped working for a little because he couldn't get a job, and everything just hit him. 50 to 60 years later, the stubborn, grumpy old man broke down. And he mentioned something that he goes to therapy, and he mentioned something. When you're in the jungle, there's some days where you don't shower, or you just shower with ice cold water every day. And he emphasized the word every day. Before he gets in the shower, he thanks whoever's out there listening for hot water. So every day, just simple thing is a shower. That kind of stuck something in me too. Brought me down a couple notches. So if you're gonna take away anything from this, I want you to take away what my grandfather would have wanted you to take away. And I have a text message from him, because he knows I was writing this story. If you didn't come up with an idea, it doesn't just have to be about me. Just bring attention to how these veterans were treated. Most people your age aren't aware. A couple of quick Googles will give you some ideas about how we were looked at. Love you. That's all.
Tegan, thank you so much for sharing your grandfather with us. Another round of applause. History is sometimes really difficult in being able to tell it well and bring us into the moment. I really enjoyed the way that you weaved your own personal reactions in that interview into the story itself of going into the past. So thank you for that beautiful story. All right, let's clear the air a little bit. And are you ready for another story? All right. Our next storyteller is Jaylene Ferrer, an ambitious communications major who is known for her unique outlook, expressive nature, and value on human connection and experiences. La benedicción de Dios. Please help me welcome to the stage Jaylene Ferrer.
Hi. Hello. Thank you guys all for coming tonight. Today I'm going to share a historical story. It's quite personal though. I'm sharing a story about my great-grandmother, who is still alive at 86 today, I think. I didn't do the math. She was born in the Great Depression in the 1930s, and this is my story sharing what she lived through Puerto Rico, where she was born, and eventually when she moved to the United States. Ay, que calor! I would hear my mother say, washing our clothes by hand in the beaming sun, so hot, near the water. I was born in a beautiful, then small town, excuse my pronunciation, I'm so nervous, Morovis in Puerto Rico. I was born on July 26, 1937, to my hard-working parents, Hinado, Iwana, and spent my days in the sun playing with my 7 siblings. Our house was made out of wood and on long stills on a lagoon that honestly protected us from vicious floods, mean storms, and kept my family together and dry. My siblings and I would play all day, run, scream, yell, tell stories, sing songs, and sometimes help our family on the land. But, as we all know, life comes in waves, good and bad. In the 1940s, or in the middle 1940s, when I was around 8, 72,000 Puerto Ricans would go aid in the World War II efforts. I was 8 at the time, so I don't remember much, but I could recall one single day that would change the course of my life forever. I was 8, again, walking home from school. I loved school. I loved learning. I was able to do things that my parents didn't have the opportunity to do, like read and write. And once I opened the door, I could see my mom gazing out the window, lost in thought with an expression of despair. I look over and my dad, who's facing the other way, had a similar face of predetermined grief. My parents sit me down and tell me, hey, your dad is going to the war. I had to drop out of school and help my mom on the field. There I was, I was working long days in the hot sun, wondering when I can go back to school, see my friends again, whispering to myself, que calor. When I was 14 in the 1950s, my whole entire life will blow up into ashes and disappear. My house burned down. My parents were distraught. I was scared, but I held my sibling's hand and we moved to San Dulce in Puerto Rico into government housings. During this time, it was uneasy. We faced a lot of discrimination. People would mutter under our breaths, calling us names like birds, making pity and fun of our situation about our family and what we went through. My mother would just yell at me and tell me, Amelia, patience and faith. And there I was, holding my siblings' hands, gritted my teeth and moved on. We had to move again. After the war, many Puerto Ricans were encouraged to move to the States and have a better job opportunities and economic prosperity. But I chose to stay. And I had a great life in Puerto Rico. I got married, had kids, got married again. I learned I had a passion for Puerto Rican cuisine, people lining up outside of my house trying to get a taste of my food and my baking. I loved it there. But the 70s were not very easy. For us workers, the 1970s were filled with tedious, long labor strikes. And for those 10 years in the 70s, 75% of those labor strikes we went on were unsuccessful because only 15% of us were unionized. Unemployment consumed our island where 40% of us faced unemployment and 70% of us were dependent and reliant on food stamps. I had to make a choice. We had to make a choice. We decided to pack our bags and go to the land of opportunity. We decided to go to Nueva York. I didn't want to leave, but New York had work, New York had chance. So I packed my bags, fresh off the island, stepped off. It was freezing. And for the first time I think in my life, I whispered to myself, good for you. And I was cursing myself for taking advantage of the warm embrace of my island. We fit right into our neighborhood. We were with our Colombian, Cubans, Dominicans, and other Puerto Rican brothers and sisters who also went through the same thing as us. We took the sacrifice. We worked long hours. We did what we can. Many families lived in one apartment unit, cramped together, trying to survive, trying to make a dream come true. I mean, even one time in the middle of the night, our neighbors would steal our food. We were scared. We prayed. We worked. So this reality won't be forever. Our entire family worked at the same university factory building tools. But in the 1980s and the 1990s, that time, they took advantage of us. They knew what position we were in. They didn't pay us, or it was just unfair working conditions. It even affected me and my family, and they didn't pay me for weeks, and I needed every dollar. But I wasn't the only one. We unionized. We went on strike. I went to the Department of Labor. I was a real American now, protesting on the streets and in part of a labor movement. We pushed through and we survived. I didn't do bad for myself. I was living the American dream. I learned how to drive. I learned English. I worked hard and long to provide for my family. I was an abuelita. I was enjoying life. But like I said, life comes and goes in waves. In 1987, me and my daughter were in a horrific car accident. Sorry. From that moment, I carried a heavy burden that no mother should carry. My daughter passed, but I lived. I cried, I cried, I cried, I prayed, I prayed, I prayed. And once I got a moment to stop the crying, stop the grieving, and look up, I saw 3 of my daughter's kids looking at me. 2 boys and a girl, with wide eyes, scared, wondering, where's their mother? What do they do? I realized what I had to do. I picked myself up, wiped my tears, wiped the dust, and adopted my daughter's kids They were my kids. I was kind of a mom again. I got myself off. Wait, I already said that. Oopsie, sorry. When things got hard, and I mean really hard, raising kids again, when you're 60 in a new world, a new environment, holding on, at night I would tell myself, Amelia, patience and faith. There we go. I've been living for a long time. I mean, I went from living in the Great Depression to seeing iPhones and TikTok. I lived through World War II, Vietnam, 9/11, labor movements. I've seen it all. But with las bendiciones de Dios, or the blessings from God, I was able to profit and be happy with the hard work I did. My children gave me grandkids, and my grandkids gave me great grandkids. And all of them were beautiful, and all of them went to school, and they were so smart, and they worked hard and visited me often. And now, when I go outside in my Fort Lauderdale apartment when it's super hot, and my husband, who I grew old with, turns on the fan saying, que calor, I could feed the ducks and close my eyes, resting at peace, knowing that I did it. I survived. Thank you!
Jaylene, thank you. Beautiful. You survived. What was your grandmother's name?
Oh, yeah, my bad. I was gonna walk to you. My grandma, my great-grandma, that she raised my mom and she raised me. Her name's Amelia Pizarro. Yeah, that's it. She's really old now. She's like 86.
Have a round of applause for our grandma. I'm trying to find a place for the storyteller, but it's really sunny. To the side, to the...
There's shade there. Yeah, right there in the corner. We're up close. There is some shade right up close.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna like...
Come on. Intimate.
Oh, it doesn't quite work.
No. It's too intimate.
Yeah, it looks like it would be.
It looks like it would be, but it's just like right here. Okay. I can let the storyteller figure it out for themselves. All right. Another round of applause. Thank you, Julie. Our next storyteller, Maya Henley Busan. Busin? Help me out. Busan. Okay. Maya is a psychology major that hopes to become a licensed clinical social worker one day. Her story, Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire. Wow, a lot of words. Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire. Please help me welcome Maya.
So my name is Maya, and I chose a story about Women's International Day. I think there's the stereotypical stories that we all hear, but there's some of them that we sometimes forget that have happened. So I chose one of those. My name is Sylvia Walker, and I'm 20 years old. I came from New York from Poland when I was just 7 years old. At home, work wasn't really there, money was never enough, so me and my mom came to New York hoping for a better life. Instead, I found myself working in a factory day and night. Everyone was packed in one same room where we could hit elbows. The room was always loud, the machines were always working, and we would never stop. The air was thick from the dust and the fabric, but we were not allowed to leave our stations. If we slowed down, we lost money. We were paid by the piece, roughly around $6 a week. No overtime, no 5-day, no weekends. Everything was just 6-day weeks. All of us were immigrants, coming from Italy or Eastern Europe like I did. Most of us, girls. We all understood one thing. We were trapped in this system. In 1909, 20,000 of us marched the New York City streets. What was called the Uprising 20,000. We marched the street for less hours, for better pay, and for better conditions. However, not a lot of people listened. Some of us were arrested, and some of us were beaten. Our factory didn't listen. March 25th of 1911 started like a usual day. It was sunny, machines were running, and we were working. However, someone said that there was a fire. At first, no one realized, but then it started to set in. We could smell the smoke, and quickly all of those piles of texture started to burn. Burned quicker than paper. So before we even realized, the entire room was in fire. The panic started to hit the room. The chairs were all on the ground and everyone was screaming and running. I tried to go to the door, but it was locked. They used to lock the doors to keep us from taking breaks. So now we were all trapped inside. Some of the girls were running to the elevator, but it was out of service. Some others tried to go to the fire escape, but it broke down because it was never refurbished. So then we all started running towards the window. People had gathered outside and they were trying to help. However, no one was able to help. All of the fire trucks would just make it to the 6th floor with their ladders, but we were on the 9th floor. So we started jumping. One by one, jumped out of the window. I remember grabbing someone's hand. I didn't know who she was. I didn't know anything about her. But we all wanted one thing, and that was to find the courage to jump out of that window. That day, 146 women died. A lot of them were young, immigrant, many just girls like I was. The fire did not end our story though. The newspapers started spreading the story and everyone started to get outraged. Soon, there was 100,000 people marching the streets of New York, demanding justice for the workers that had been locked in that factory. For the first time, those in power could not set us to a side and ignore us. For the first time, new laws were passed, factories were inspected, and working conditions began to change. Something else began to grow. Women all over the world began to rise. Because now they had a story that showed why we had to keep fighting. International Women's Day became more than just an idea. It became a reminder of all the women that were stuck in that factory, a reminder of the cost of silence, and a reminder of what happened when workers are treated like their lives don't matter. So when March 8th comes each year, it is not just a celebration, it is about remembering the girls who worked until they couldn't, the girls that the doors were locked, and remembering all those voices that were not supposed to be heard, but changed the world anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. Very powerful story. I'm curious, Maya, how you came across that story?
So I'm from Spain, and in Spain, each March 8th, it's like a history day where all professors teach us about the importance of that date. And
when I was younger, they explained this story, and it really struck to me that the reason why these women died was basically because no one listened to them, even though they had been years fighting for it. And I realized many people don't know this story. They just think like, oh, some people marched and then that day became a celebration. So I thought it was very important to make it known.
Well, thank you for making it known for us. Round of applause. Thank you. Our next storyteller is going to be Brooklyn. Yay! Please help me welcome Brooklyn Howard.
I'm gonna apologize about the glasses. I would normally take those off, but I'm a little compromised at the moment. So, anyways, my name is Brooklyn Howard. I am a nursing major, and I'm gonna tell you the history of toilet paper. So earlier human civilizations were not really sure what they used. We kind of assumed they just used what they had around them, but anything that's very available, like grass, moss, sticks, you know, stuff. I thought the same thing. Even snow, I don't know how they did that, but apparently snow. How do we find that out either? Not sure. Anyways, but we do know in ancient Roman civilizations, you might have heard of this, they had sponges on a stick, and that sounds pretty productive, but they were communal sponges. So they'd be used in public restrooms, and once you need them, you just go grab them and do your thing, but their way of cleaning them wasn't very useful either. They had it in a bucket of water with salt and vinegar, and yeah, that the rich people, the royals, they had their own, so at least they didn't share any booty bacteria, but but the commoners were not so lucky. And in Europe, the kings and queens, it's similar to the Romans, had their own personal cleaning materials, but they also had servants. They had workers that would help them with that. They'd make sure that they'd get better materials like linen, cloths, stuff like that. The commoners would still use straws, unfortunately, at the time. And actually, the worker was called the groomer of the stool. And you would think that's not a very wanted position to work as, but it was actually one that was taken by a noble person. They would hear a lot of the personal opinions of the kings and queens, so they're actually kind of feared amongst the other people that worked in their castle, in the kingdom. And anyways, they would make sure they get proper cleaning products. The first people to use toilet paper, or paper for the bathroom, was about 1,500 years ago in China, which China is where paper was invented. Though at this time when they were using it, it was really only by the higher ups. The commoners didn't have access to that, but about 600 years ago is when they started making paper for bathroom purposes specifically. Before that, the commoners were still using paper, but just like scraps that they had around. And over in Europe, there wasn't any need for paper. They would use parchment paper for books, but about 560 years ago, Johann Gutenberg invented a printing press that made books easier to make, meaning there was now a demand for paper. Before that, they just made paper by hand, which took a really, really long time. In colonial America, people used corn cobs to clean their booties. Once it got around to the early 1800s, people started using scrap paper in Europe and the Americas, and in America as well. Joseph Gayati produced the first commercial toilet paper in 1857. sold in single sheets, so it was not successful at all. People couldn't afford it, and they also didn't find a good reason to use it. They already had newspapers that they were just using for it, so why spend money on stuff they already have access to? And another big issue with that is people were too embarrassed to buy something that was used specifically for the bathroom. There was a stigma around that. But then our indoor plumbing came around in 1829. A hotel in Boston was the first to use indoor plumbing. Soon after that, homes started to be, the rich people homes started to have more, and then through that, more and more people were able to have indoor plumbing, which then became important to start using softer toilet papers because the regular paper, newspapers, would clog up the things. So we had Scotch paper that it wasn't an invention. They would buy paper and resell it and market it to hotels and drugstores, which helped get rid of the stigma of buying stuff for bathroom purposes only, because it was associated with fancy bathrooms. So people were like, ooh, I want to look fancy, I'll grab my little toilet paper. And then it gets around to the 1970s, and we're finally able to have commercials on what we now know as toilet paper. And you know, now indoor plumbing is common amongst all homes, so it's very, very important that people have this. And here we are today. We use toilet paper in our daily lives, I hope. Thank you.
Brooklyn, thank you for sharing something so deep and important with us. Oh gosh. You know, one of the cool things about stories is they let you think about other stories. And how many people have a good toilet paper story? A few of you. Okay, good. And I'm shocked by that. What is it? The stool person?
Oh, the groom of the stool.
The groom of the stool. Oh, yeah. That is cool. Does he go around saying, "I know your shit"? Oh my gosh. Anyway.
That was my favorite part.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So because all these memories came up, I just have to take a moment to share a couple of them. That my cousin said he was at camp and he was at Scouts, and they had this moment where they had difficult questions. And one of them was, if you were stuck in the toilet, you know, the camp toilet, and you didn't have toilet paper, what would you do? And they came up with all kinds of answers, and you shared some of them with us. And my favorite was, let it dry. So the second favorite, well, no, that didn't work. Okay. So, okay. Sorry, I'm gonna stop now. Our next storyteller, we'll save you from this, is Emily Knox. Emily is a fantasy literature fanatic who loves to see and read stories of growth, hardship, magic, and found friendship. She is looking forward to all of her future reading time after she graduates with her bachelor's in cultural studies this semester. Emily Knox, her story is, hang on, wait for it, The Machine That Changed What We Wear. Please help me welcome Emily Knox.
No, I'm still on the full side.
How about downstairs?
Come forward. What about over? No, it's just the face.
It's just right.
It's literally like.
What if you sit? Yeah, but can she sit?
Oh,
I can help. I could sit.
I don't know if we can see you.
Maybe.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay.
Just bring the I think it's. Or no, there. Yeah, I'm the weird one.
We'll just major slouch.
Yeah. You got it, girl.
Yeah.
Oh, it's hot. Hi. I'm Emily. I'm really glad that we are all talking about fun things. To continue this story, the theme of cleaning, I guess. My story is about the history of laundry. So, before the washing machine, before modern technology was invented, laundry looked very, very different. So think back a couple hundred years ago, 1600s, 1700s, they had nothing of the sort that we know as the laundry machine today. Most people would go to rivers, creeks, and bring big wooden paddles, like an oar for a canoe or a boat, and take their clothes and in the stream, put it in the water, and then put it on a rock and hit it really hard with the wood to beat the dirt out of their clothes. If they didn't do that in more populated regions, such as like big cities like Rome or any other big city in any other Western country, somebody said Rome earlier, so I remembered that one, they would actually have houses, laundry houses, where it was basically, there was a big cavernous space with pools, and in these laundry houses they actually had different sections of where that they would do laundry with different chemicals for different stains, different things that you get on your clothing, different fabrics. But what really shaped that's what shaped what people wore. One, it was what they could get. So what materials were available, how much money you had, and how much they could withstand cleaning, because cleaning was not easy on the clothing. So because of this, they wore clothes very different to how we wear clothes today, before the laundry machine was invented. Before, most people, at least in Western cultures, would layer. On any given day, whether it was cold, hot, raining, snowing, hailing, volcano erupting, people would be wearing 3 to 4 layers of clothing minimum. And that sounds really hot, but for one, I'm wearing 3 layers of clothing right now, and I'm actually going to go through all of the layers because I've learned over the past couple of years why they used to do this. So to start out with, your base layer of clothing, your underwear, as you would call it, was basically a big white sheet that either went to your knees or your ankles, depending on how long your clothes normally went. If you were a man, it normally went to your knees. Oh, just tight.
I think the power went out, so.
Oh boy.
The power's gone. Just.
I guess it's back.
The power's still on.
Maybe it just went out.
Maybe.
Where was I? Oh, underwear. So most people would call this your chemise, and it would also be your pajamas for the most part. You would have, this would be your most abundant layer of the clothing you would have. Most people would have 6 or 7 pairs, one for every day of the week, and you would change this layer out every single day because it protected the rest of your clothes from your body oils and your sweat and your dirt and your grime and all the gross things that happen when it gets hot. It happened again. So I'm just going to talk really loud until it goes back on. So instead of just having your clothes touch your skin and then throwing them in the washer, you only washed your base layer, which was made out of hardy, thick cottons or very tightly woven wools, because it was meant to be beaten, basically. It was meant to withstand the most harsh treatment that you could inflict on a piece of fabric on a weekly basis. And your next layer up would be your support garments. Men also wore support garments, but for the most part, my focus is on women's fashion, so I don't really know a lot about men's clothing, but for women's garments, that would include stays, corsets, skirt supports, petticoats, crinolines, basically anything that would help your body hold up to the daily stresses of life. From about, I would say before 1400, that was just inbuilt into your clothing. It wasn't a separate garment. But after that, it was a separate garment, and many, many garments sometimes. Your next layer up was your outer clothes. These were very different than the clothes that we wear now as our outer clothes. Like your sundress, you just don't. It's very free-flowing. It's very well put together. Everything on the inside is finished, but that's with modern clothing because it has to be finished because it goes in a washing machine. Before it, outer clothes were almost never washed. They were always protected from your body by your underlayers and protected from the outside by overlayers for weather. Basically anything that would be like, you protect for the day, basically whatever's going on. But they were unfinished on the inside, they were unlined, and most of the time they had threads just hanging around, and all the edges were loose. There was nothing that was securely fastened because the weave of the fabric was tight enough, but also it didn't get tussled. It didn't really get touched because most of the time it was just secure on your body, and if it wasn't, it was hanging up in your closet. Now that we have the washing machine, though, we have to finish the insides of our clothes. We construct them much more simply. So the less pieces the better, because the less pieces means less seams, less weak points. We, instead of hand finishing every item, which is much, much stronger than machine stitching unless you're using industrial machines, we can now machine stitch clothing, and you don't even have to knot off the end of the fabric, the end of the thread sometimes, because that's modern machinery is wonderful. So that's kind of how our clothes changed, but the reason that we really had to dress like that was because of how hard laundry was. So they did it in creek, clothes with paddles, had specific places with chemicals that they would clean clothes, but when we think about that, we think like, oh yeah, that makes sense. What we don't really think about is how much work that would incur. So for laundry day, it wouldn't just be like, oh, I have a couple of hours to go, I'll just go put this in the machine and walk away. There was no machine. So you'd have to pick up every single item of clothing, you'd have to scrub every single stain, every single part that smelled bad, got dirty, and make sure that you were getting every inch of that fabric, which meant hours and hours and hours and hours of labor with your hands soaked in water, probably also your knees and your feet in the water too, if you're in a creek, and back-breaking work, sitting over clothes, going like this. So you're huddled in that position for hours, and it takes a full day to do it, and the next day you have to go back to work. So somebody, I think it was, it's not on this, Jacob Christian Shaker, in about the mid-1700s, he's a German man, was like, you know what, that sounds really tedious. Let's see if there's any way we can help that. At the time, they used a bucket and a stick with a stool attached to it, which is kind of funny because you said the groom of the stool, and this is, I was like thinking about that. But it's a big stick with a stool and a handle at the top and a tub. You put your clothes in the tub with water and your soap, and you'd stand there, and I'm going to do the motion because you have to stand up and do it. Stand there with your stick over your thing, and you'd pick the stick up to twist it, and when you put it back down, you pick the stick up and twist it, put it back down, and then twist it back around so that you're agitating the clothes like the inside of your washer. So you are the energy behind the motion of cleaning your clothes. To make this a little bit easier, Jacob said, why don't I outfit and manufacture a brace to hold the stick so no, you don't have to hold it. And that was the first ever washing machine, if you can classify that as a machine, because it is still hand-powered, but the only machine part of it is the fact that it's one complete thing, and it doesn't do anything by itself, and there's not really any moving parts. So the inventors, some of the key figures, there was many people, but the people I'm going to mention today are James King, Hamilton Smith, William Blackstone, and Alva J. Fisher. There we are. So in the 1760s and 90s, Jacob Christian Shaker patented a guide to hold the shaker stick in the washer, and that was the first thing that happened. It took about 45 to 50 years for any real difference to be seen in patents of the machine style changing. In 1851, James King patented a drum style machine that had all its moving parts in-housed and was powered by a hand crank. This was diagonal with your drum like this, and you powered it like that. You put your clothes in, put the water in, you still had to boil the water yourself, you still had to keep it hot, and that was in 1851. In 1858, Hamilton Smith said, well, let's turn it the other way, let's turn it back into a tub with a stick. So he patented a rotary washing machine and that improved upon previous manual versions, and this one included little bowls on the side of the drum so that it would constantly pour water back over the clothes from the bottom of the basin. But this one also had an included water boiler, and it also moved the water through the bottom of the basin with suction. That was some crazy physics to really look at that. I watched a moving diagram of it, and I was like, it's crazy what people designed 200 years ago. So the next big advancement for laundry machines was in 1874 by William Blackstone, and he watched his wife slave away at laundry for a couple of years and was like, you know what? For her birthday, I'm going to give her the present of building her a custom machine. So he built it, his wife loved it, and she gossiped to all of her friends, and the entire town was like, well, if it's that good, let us buy one. So through this, he was able to form his own manufacturing and distribution company, which was one of the first laundry machine companies to be invented at that time. In 1908, Alva J. Fisher came up and mashed together a bunch of patents to create a different machine with electricity. And this machine was not the first electrically powered machine to be made or used, but it was the first one to be mass produced and then distributed. And it was officially commercialized in 1910 by the Hurley Machine Company. And this machine was made out of metal, it was portable, and had the ability to reverse the drum direction to prevent clothing from bunching, which, if you've ever, rolled snow in the snowballs or anything like that, you need the constant motion to go one way. If you roll it the other way, it unwinds. Well, the same thing happens with clothes in a washing machine, except you don't want them to all combine, because then you just have a big mass of fabric that's wet and really, really tight together, and really hard to get apart, and all of your clothes are gone. The only problem with this machine is that it was electric, and this was before, electricity was safe. It's still very dangerous today, but we have a lot more safety precautions in place now. So, because the electricity was pretty elementary at that point in time, this machine was prone to electric shorts and shocks whenever the water accidentally leaked. Which means that any time you were doing laundry, if you accidentally touched the motor, you could get a big electric shock, which was basically equivalent to putting your hand in an outlet. Some people died because of it, so they had to fix it in later models.
because of these machines, the Alvej's Fisher's model Thor was what it was called because it was electric powered by the god of lightning. The ads for that one were really funny. That was the first modern machine. After that, machines basically started to look like what they look like now. And since the early 1900s, there really hasn't been much improvement to washing machines other than making them more safe because, electricity, and putting them in bigger boxes. Before, instead of your washing machine being square, it was just the inner drum with a round barrel around it, around the barrel, and legs, with all of its compartment or pieces on the bottom, which you could see all of it. So instead of having that, modern manufacturers just put a metal box around it and called it good. Because laundry now takes so much less time, by the mid-1920s, when I think that was when suffragists started, with Maya's story, with Maya's story, I was reminded of this story, but with the advancements in the laundry machine going forward, many women were now freed up to spend more time on education and labor that actually paid them something or actually improved their life instead of just taking time out of their day. So the washing machine not just helped empower women, but it also quietly transformed both daily life and fashion, and changed not just how clothes were washed, but how they were designed, worn, and produced. Which reminds me that sometimes the technologies that reshape what we do and what we wear are not just things that are used for sewing or designing, but the technologies that actually help us clean it.
Yeah, now the sun is down on us.
Another round of applause. Thank you, Emily. It's amazing the technology that comes about for different reasons, and the technology for washing our clothes we don't think about too much. So thank you for that. All right, I have no jokes about that one. I'll save you. Our next storyteller is Cassie Molina. Cassandra Molina is a graduating legal studies student that believes in unity and connection. Her story, ¿Por qué el mismo camino? Caminaron los tres. Because these three walked down the same path. Cassie Molina.
Hi. I'm doing the history story. Feels really nice being here because I'm graduating, and I'm a musician. I'm in a band. My band actually played here my freshman year, so it's like really like full circle. I'm gonna start with some lyrics. El espectro es andino con Bolívar y el Che, porque el mismo camino caminaron los tres. So these are lyrics. I'll translate it now that I think about it. So it's saying, no, I have to explain it. Okay, sorry. These are lyrics by a Cuban musician named Silvio Rodriguez. I kind of just discovered him through my dad, who's right there. Yay. He is Cuban. His music was like used for the revolution. He was part of the Nueva Trova movement, which was basically just during the Cuban Revolution. You know, the way that people unite is art. For me, music is a very big thing. I can't really live without it. And so I feel like I just wrote an essay about this actually. I just started studying peace and social justice, and so I was required to take a Latin American politics course. And, you know, being the daughter of a Bolivian mom and a Nicaraguan dad, you can see why America is like so unstable, America being the whole continent. And when I was looking into Silvio Rodriguez, I noticed that my dad knew all these songs that were for revolutions. Again, my dad is Nicaraguan, and Silvio is Cuban, so it's like music really transcends like borders. It transcends everything because it's just a medium which people feel connected, which we really crave as humans. So, so yeah, I noticed also that Silvio Rodriguez, which is the lyrics I just read, he has a song specifically for Nicaragua, because what Nicaragua went through, Cuba went through, or any Latin American revolution, it's all the same. There's more lyrics that I wanted to say, which was Con que el águila daba por el cuello al obrero, which means with the eagle representing the U.S. Hit the neck of the worker, which we kind of already talked about with other stories with history, where it's like it's the workers who get, you know, the short end of the stick, and we have to unionize. I say we, sorry, you know, they had to unionize, you know. But yeah, so it was just really interesting to me, like these lyrics and these songs, and they're beautiful songs too. He's a poet, you know. He started as a poet. He didn't start as a revolutionary. And it was him and like Pablo Milanés, like all these great musicians. And it was just 2 weeks ago. I was driving home from Miami with my dad, and it was like 3 a.m. and it's like everyone's like tired, and you're trying like not to fall asleep. You need like music or like stimulation while you're driving like on 75, which is like the same road for like an hour and a half. It's just like, you know, my dad was driving. He's like, "Can you put some Silvio Rodriguez songs?" I'm like, "Yeah." So I put them on. And I also went to, like, in conversation, we were talking about my spring break. I went to Italy, and I saw my friends when I was studying abroad, and there were some strikes, some labor strikes for the train system in Italy. And there was a song that they were singing in Spanish, and it was El pueblo unido jamás será vencido, which means the people together won't like fall, like if we're united, the united people. And I noticed my dad knew all the words to that song too, and I was like, what? I looked into that song. It's Chilean. It was against the Pinochet regime, and it's what the people sang, you know, the people revolutionizing. And my dad knew all the lyrics, and I asked him, like, how do you know the song too? You know, it's really interesting. My dad, he immigrated here because of the Nicaraguan Revolution War, which is what the original song, what I started with, was about. My grandfather was part of the military, so I guess my dad had like a unique role in seeing, like moving around Nicaragua, seeing all these different things, and he told me he would hear people singing, El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. And it's so, to me, it just like really deepened that connection of like, wow, like music, art, any type of medium of art, painting, visual, you know, sensory, it's like we all crave to be together, and especially being Latin American with how unstable it is from the US, you know, it's just, you know, it's sad because it's like we're unstable, but at least we're together and we can sing the song together and have hope that we can fight together. And yeah, that was my story.
Thanks, Cassie. Cassie, what's the name of your band?
Mingo Drive.
Say it again?
Mingo Drive.
Mingo Drive. Oh, wow. Okay. Round of applause for Cassie and Cassie's dad back there. Cassie, I love what you said. The way people unite is with art. The way people unite is with art, and the way people unite also with music. You remind me of a friend of mine. She said she went to a protest, and she was protesting, and she was on this side of the street, and the other people were on the other side of the street. And, you know, they're like shouting and protesting, and they're shouting and they're protesting, and they have a little break. And then on their side, someone came up with guitar and started singing songs. And so she went over there to sing songs with them. And then they started the protest again, so she went to the other side. So I say that because music really does bring people together. And as you think about, you know, just how stories bring people together, but music can keep movements together. So keep writing your songs, and keep writing your songs about something that matters for you. So round of applause. Thank you, Cassie. Our next storyteller is going to be Mario Shepard, sharing a story. Please help me welcome Mario.
Okay. My name is Mario. I'm a senior in the entrepreneurship program, and today the story I'm going to share is the story of the great Ashoka. You may know of Ashoka. On the Indian flag, the blue sigil you see is actually Ashoka's chakra. So if you didn't know that. So, let me begin. In 304 BCE, Ashoka was born into the Mauryan Empire. His father was, Bidusara, the emperor of the region, and he was the emperor of the Mauryan Empire. His mother, on the other hand, was a commoner. Ashoka had many siblings, although they were of royal bloodline, so he was much further down on the line to the throne. He still had a royal upbringing. He was well educated, he was rather cunning, and he was very charismatic. However, he had a few flaws. He was quite short, rather on the large side, and he had a skin condition which left him with blemishes and rather an unfair appearance, you could say. But he was still very well versed. As time went on, Ashoka realized his place in the empire, and he grew discontent. He wanted to prove to his father that he could become emperor. However, his father, Bindusahara, insisted on his eldest brother, Tsushima, becoming the next emperor. And this discontent only grew as time went on, and he grew older to where he is now. His father, Bindusara, eventually granted him an opportunity to govern one of the northern lands and to kind of quell any uprisings that kind of went along. And he did an excellent job at this, so well that the ministers, the emperor's ministers, took notice, and they advised Bindusara to make Ashoka the next emperor. But the emperor was very insistent on Tsushima becoming the emperor, and this really angered Ashoka. Time went on even further, to the point where the emperor, the current emperor, grew ill, and in this time period, illness meant certain death. So he lay upon his deathbed, and he called for his eldest son, Tsushima, but he could not come. He was off in enemy territory negotiating foreign policies. But Ashoka was in the room, as well as his ministers. And the ministers, they begged and they pleaded Bindusara to make Ashoka the next emperor. They believed Tsushima to be quite spoiled, irrational, and ill-tempered, you could say. Even Ashoka himself rose in outrage, and he said this quote. Let me find this real quick. "If the throne is rightfully mine, the gods will make me emperor." And the legend says that as soon as he said that, Bindusara spontaneously died on the spot. So the advisors, the legend goes that they kind of tampered with the emperor's will, and they made Ashoka the prince, or the emperor, the current emperor. This was in roughly 250 BCE. And the first thing he did was disappoint all of the advisors, and he actually became a very, very, you could say, chaotic ruler. He ruled with fear and terror. And the first thing he did when he became emperor is lay a trap for his eldest brother, Tsushima, to be burned when he came home. Now, this is the story of the great Ashoka. So he actually does have a redemption arc. His father left a scar on his personality. He wanted to prove to both himself and the emperor, his father, that he was worthy to rule India. So there was a rival empire called the Kalinga, and they were a very proud race. They had dogs, they had wealth, and they had a very powerful army of roughly 300,000 men. Ashoka thought it would be wise, although in hindsight it was not, he thought it would be wise to conquer the Kalinga and prove that he is the mightiest warrior. So he sent 3 million men, 300,000 cavalry, and 9,000 war elephants to completely snuff out the Kalinga. And the battle was rumored to last only roughly a day. There was an insane, horrific massacre on Kalingan soil. The next day rolled around, and Ashoka wanted to bask in his glory of the war he just won. So on horseback, he went to visit the Kalinga in the new territory that he just conquered. But what he was met with was the most shameful thing he could ever imagine. Hundreds of thousands of Kalingan corpses and Mauryan corpses littered about. Every step he took squelched and stained his feet with red. The stench was unbearable, and the buzzing of the flies was deafening. He saw women and children roaming around the corpses, looking for their fathers. Some were unlucky enough to find them, and their wails pierced his ears. He came back to the Mauryan Empire a different man. He treated his ministers with a newfound respect. He treated commoners with a newfound respect. And in hindsight, or not in hindsight, but previously, he had been known to be a very, you could say, evil man. He once instructed his ministers to chop down every tree bearing flowers or fruit, an impossible task. And when they failed, he beheaded all of them and replaced them. He had a new palace constructed specifically for torturing people, which the details I will not go into. But for him to show this new side, this new character, his current ministers knew that something had changed. In the following years of his reign, he constructed many temples dedicated to the Buddha, many statues, many pillars, and he dedicated himself to the happiness of his people. He expanded his reign, he built irrigation fields for his people, and he ensured that hunger was no longer an issue. And in time, he became to be known as the Great Ashoka that went down in legend today. And I found that to be a very interesting story to see how his character had developed through time. So that's all I have to share.
Thank you, Mario. Mario, why'd you pick that story to share?
Honestly, it just kind of like shocked me, enough to the point where I wanted to share it. So I thought it was pretty inspiring because most people in power don't have that perspective, that remorse to kind of reflect.
Yeah, there are a lot of shocking things in history when we look back, right? Lots to learn from. Let's get a round of applause for all of our storytellers today. Oh, yes. Please welcome to the stage, Jack.
Hello everyone, my name is Jack. I'm a junior at FGCU, and me personally, I love bananas, and as I ate a banana today, I was kind of thinking about, where it came from, it is kind of crazy. The majority of produce around the world was grown completely not from here at all, thousands of miles away. Dozens of hands have had to touch it, and it just got me thinking about the history of bananas itself. So that's what I like to speak about with y'all, the history of bananas, and more specifically the dark history of the banana republics. So flashback to the early 1900s. We're in Central America, South America as well, and there's a bunch of like independent plantations. They're all doing pretty great for themselves. They're buying sugar, or they're growing sugar, pineapples, in our case, bananas. And then eventually, refrigeration, it becomes more and more normalized around the world, eventually to the point to where these plantations are able to open up their doors to trade across the world. And who would be? The US would be these plantations' number one client. So they're just selling bananas, sugarcane, pineapples, and eventually three key players came into the mix. They bought up all the other plantations around them, and they were the top guys in Central America and South America. It was the United Fruit Company, the Coimel Fruit Company, and the Standard Fruit Company. And all three of these companies were pretty evil. They all hate each other's guts, but they're willing to play nice with each other because they love money a lot more. And at the time, they're just doing this, growing bananas, kind of abusing the workers. And eventually, Honduras, the president of Honduras gives a land grant to the Coimel Fruit Company in exchange for infrastructure. And the Standard Fruit Company, they really did not like this at all. So they kind of thought to themselves, hey, how can I influence the world around me? Well, the answer is money, which they had a lot of. So they took a decent portion of their profits and went to a mercenary group. Yes, a mercenary group. And they paid them off. And with the help of that mercenary group and the Honduras president, the first one, the one before the current one, they overthrew the government. They overthrew the Honduras government for bananas. For bananas. And when I say overthrew, they executed the president. I mean, it was horrible. And the U.S. saw this, being the number one client, and, you know, they weren't too fond of that, you know. They kind of went to these companies and said, like, hey, guys, you got to, like, chill out, like, or we need to come up with something together. And they decided that these companies would build up the country's infrastructure, and in return, they would get land grants. And in the U.S.'s return, they would get plenty of bananas. And I guess at the time, the U.S. was okay with that, so they went along. And Honduras was kind of the first country to adopt this, and then other Central American companies, they saw the rapid infrastructure beginning to happen, and they thought, you know, screw it, let's just throw away our people and get infrastructure and kind of like make the top 5% of our countries wealthy, which is what happened. You know, if you were in the top 5%, you were probably picking bananas on land you didn't own and making dirt cheap wages. But I guess that was how capitalism worked down there. But eventually this went on for years and years up until the 1950s. The entirety of Central America is what we call these banana republics. They're controlled by corporations, produce corporations, and they just don't have a lot of power, these governments. It's really all in the corporations. And eventually it's 1954, and Guatemala, the newly elected Democratic president, man, I forget his name, I should know it, but he didn't like what was happening to his country or the other countries around him. And he thought, okay, I'm going to be the new face of change around here. I'm going to make some laws. I'm going to really kick these corporations out. So he starts doing that. And, well, the United Fruit Company, the Coimel Fruit Company, and the Standard Fruit Company, none of them like this. So they all go to the U.S. Again, they're good old pal. And at the time, it's the 50s. You know, the Cold War is going on, and communism's a real big concern. And they kind of go to Eisenhower and be like, hey, man, we have this new Guatemalan president. Basically, he's a commie. He's taking away land from us and giving it back to the people. If you don't do something now, it's basically going to spread all over Central America and South America. And I guess out of red fear and yellow love, the United States thought, you know what, that was enough. And again, they overthrew the government of Guatemala. They kicked out the president, they put in a new president, and for the next 40 years, up until 1996, Guatemala was basically U.S. controlled, just through the presidents themselves. And that was kind of the brief history of the banana republics. Nowadays, Central America, they've been able to diversify their economy so they aren't so dependent on bananas and produce alike. But those three originally fruit companies, they're still around today, and under different names, of course. The Coimel Fruit Company, they were bought out by United, and United Fruit Company, they changed their name to none other than Dole Fruit Company. I'm sure we've all had a banana or some type of fruit from Dole. Just know that the history is kind of dark behind that. And then the Standard Fruit Company, they became Chiquita Banana, which I was literally eating one today. That's what made me kind of think about this. Yes, the dancing fruit lady merchant is kind of a cold-blooded murderer, y'all. But it's okay, I guess. That's just history. And yeah, they're still around today. They kind of keep their history in the dark, but I just thought I'd like to share that with y'all. When we eat produce, we kind of never think about where it came from, whose hands it touched, such and that. And I kind of just believe we shouldn't feel guilty about eating these things, but we should really learn their story and just slow down with all. And I just kind of find it fascinating that the best stories really aren't in a textbook, but they're just laying around on your counter. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Jack, for making that story digestible. That was a lot of history in a little space. So thank you for making it so digestible for us, and letting us know about a thing that we eat, very regularly, that we see very regularly, and don't think too much about. So another round of applause for Jack.